I think pulling your pants down at the urinal is like all the way down to the floor is like the ultimate power move. It just screams to every other man in the room, I do not give a fuck. Bonus points if you hold your shirt up as well.
Yeah, the toddler piss.
Yeah, go full butters.
Yeah.
Quite manly indeed. That was the Beatles with Back in the USSR, and today we're going back to the USSR, back to the bad old days of the Soviet Union, and the most severe nuclear power plant accident in history. We'll be looking at the causes of the meltdown, the immediate aftermath, the destruction caused, the death toll, the current state of Chernobyl and its nearby town, and, because it's Brad is a bad person, we might quickly investigate a few conspiracy theory angles just for fun. So, My name is Morgan. I am the host of this podcast, and I am joined by my two favourite comrades, Len and Lachlan.
Hello.
And Bolshevik Brad.
Hello.
How are we feeling today, guys?
I should have said Privyet. I'm feeling lightheaded. It smells like paint in here, so that's good.
We got a nice buzz.
It's good. I'm in the right mindset.
Yeah, I'm feeling
you've
excellent
been
as well.
Regaling us all week with your tales of DIY.
That's right. I've officially turned into a father. I'm fixing stuff with my hands.
That stuff.
Real salt of the earth shit.
That's right. Blue collar.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. Now, Chernobyl is a popular topic at the moment due to the HBO series, which is currently the highest rated television show of all time on IMDb.
Oh.
So have you guys seen the show? I assume you signed up to Foxtel so you could watch it legally.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I have seen the show.
Mm-hmm. I finished watching
it.
it.
I am choosing to ignore the second part of your question.
Yeah. All right, well,
is that for legal reasons?
It's a 5-part miniseries. All three of us have seen it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we all really enjoyed it, and we'd all recommend
it. was excellent. Yep.
What we'll be talking about today, though, of course, doesn't assume that you've seen the miniseries. After all, it's a dramatized version of events, so it is a real story that we'll be talking about the real story, but, it's just topical at the moment because of the TV show.
And the popularity, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Before we get into it, Lachlan, do you want to crack open a cold one with the boys?
It's time to crack open a cold one with the boys.
So this week, I thought I'd try and stick to the theme of Chernobyl, catastrophic nuclear meltdown. I have a Gage Roads Brewing Company Atomic Pale Ale.
Yeah,
tell me.
Made from water out of the reactor.
Dry hopped and unfiltered. It is 1.2 standard drinks from, obviously, Gage Roads Brewing Company in Palmyra, Western Australia.
Oh.
Now, on the cap, I just noticed, I like this. It says, use an opener or shred your palms.
Oh.
So, I like that. A little bit of sass.
I like that they give you an option there as well.
That's right.
It's all about choice. Choice is the spice of life.
I'm going to pop this bad boy open.
Ooh.
Not much of a hiss.
No.
Oh, it's no good.
Oh, no. It's not radiating with flavour.
It is glowing bright green. No, I can't even speak. Fuck.
Cut that out.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about what happened on that fateful day. Well, ironically enough, it started with a safety test. In a nuclear power plant, water is pumped from tanks into the core of the nuclear reactor. The heat generated from the nuclear reaction turns the water into steam, which spins turbines to generate electricity. But those pumps need their own electricity. At Chernobyl, if for whatever reason the power plant could not receive electricity, there were diesel-powered pumps that would keep the water flowing in. But these diesel pumps would take a while to start up, so the safety test was this. In the event of a loss of power coming into the plant, can the turbines themselves generate enough power to keep the water running in the core for long enough for the diesel pumps to take over? So, you need some specific conditions for this test. Turn the power down very low and turn the turbines off. measure the power generated by the dying turbines to see if the output would be enough to power the water pumps for long enough for the diesel pumps to take over. Now, every nuclear reactor in the world has a shut-off button. If things are getting crazy and a meltdown could be imminent, you just smash the shut-off button and all the control rods are shot in at once to the reactor, instantly ending the nuclear reaction. Many reactors in the Soviet Union, however, had a fatal design flaw that could turn the shut-off button into a nuclear detonator. Though this flaw was known, it was not corrected for 3 reasons. 1, admitting the flaw would be embarrassing. 2, fixing the issue in the reactor across the Soviet states would be quite costly. And 3, even with the flaw, the reactors would never melt down because there would need to be a series of decisions so unfathomably incompetent to even get the reactor into the position where it could melt down.
So we never need to worry about it happening, and it's all okay.
Yeah.
What follows now is an unfathomably incompetent series of decisions.
Series of unfortunate events.
Okay. So there were 3 big dogs in charge of Chernobyl power plant. Plant director Viktor Bryukhanov, chief engineer Nikolai Fomin, and deputy chief engineer Anatoly Dyatlov.
No relation to Igor Dyatlov
yeah.
of Dyatlov's Pass.
Everything in Russia happens with someone called Dyatlov involved. They had tried to do this safety test 3 times, but it had failed each time. It was a box they needed to check, and so the 4th time they did it, they were determined to make sure they could finally tick that fucking box. The test was initially scheduled for the day shift on April 25, 1986. Starting at 1 a.m., there was a gradual reduction in the output of power in order to very slowly get it down to 800 megawatts for the test. By late morning, as the day shift was starting, the reactor was operating at half of its regular output. However, those in charge of the nearby Kiev electrical grid requested that the further reduction of power be postponed. Another power station had gone offline, and they were worried that with Chernobyl reducing output, there wouldn't be enough to satisfy the electricity demands of the large city of Kiev. So what did they do at Chernobyl? Cancel the test? No. They just postponed it until the night shift when demand for electricity in Kiev would be low.
Okay.
Postponing, though, rather than cancelling, was the first of many terrible decisions. It meant that the day shift workers, who are their best workers and who are familiar with these kinds of procedures, would not be running the test. Instead, it would be left to the night shift workers who would show up to work that night and be informed that they were just about to do a safety test.
Not ideal.
At Chernobyl, there are 3 shifts: the day shift, evening shift, and night shift. The night shift is the least eventful with the lowest electricity demand, and it is the least desirable shift. So what does that mean? Well, you get the least qualified workers. They started at midnight, 1 hour after power had begun decreasing again, and 1 hour before the test was to occur. Good luck with that.
Foreshadowing.
So, Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer at Chernobyl, was there to be in charge of the test. Alexander Akimov was the night shift manager, and Toptonov was the reactor operator, a 25-year-old who had been working as an unsupervised senior engineer for only 3 months. The power output was reduced to 800 megawatts, but as they tried to stabilize the output, it kept falling due to reactor poisoning, as it is known, because xenon-135 had been produced without being burned off. It's usually burned off when the core is at its usual temperature, but it had been operating at half power for so long, due to the test delay, that xenon-135 had built up and was now slowing down the reaction, decreasing the output far below the 700 megawatt minimum for the test to only 30 megawatt, maybe even less. This is 1% of the reactor's regular output. The only safe way to increase the output from this low is to do it over a period of 24 hours, but the test is scheduled to start in less than half an hour. Dyatlov can't wait that long. He instructs the operators to increase the power as fast as possible so they can start the test on time.
Yep, just fucking pedal to the metal, ramp that bitch up.
Yep.
The best the operators can do is get the output up to 200 megawatts by taking out all of the control rods. That's 500 megawatts lower than the minimum required for the test. Oh well, I guess we can't do the test. We better call it off. Nope. Dyatlov says 200 megawatts is fine. Don't worry about it. Just start the test. So the test begins at 1:23 a.m. The pumps are turned off, and immediately immediately reactivity increases. Now there is no water coming in and no control rods. The temperature jumps up immediately, burning off all the built-up xenon-135. There is nothing left in the core to slow the reaction. The balance has totally shifted towards a feedback loop of increased reactivity.
Oh.
As the temperature continues rising and the output continues increasing, the operators know something is wrong. Thank God for that shut-off button. Akimov hits AZ5, the shut-off button, at 1:23 a.m. and 40 seconds. At Chernobyl, if you press AZ5, then the control rods all go into the reactor at once and, theoretically, shut down the reaction. However, the control rods had tips made of graphite, which actually accelerates the reaction. But that doesn't matter.
God.
That doesn't matter. A momentary acceleration before the shut-off of the reaction is not a big deal, usually, but with so little water in the core, the remaining water instantly turns to steam, which expands and actually stops the control rods from moving into place. Now their tips are fixed in position, leaving the graphite exposed. There's no way to stop the reaction now. It's overheating with nothing to slow it down. The usual output of reactor number 4 was 3,200 megawatts, but the unchecked reaction pushed it to at least 30,000 megawatts.
Good lord.
Its last recorded output. Chernobyl reactor number 4 bursts. The lid shoots off and oxygen rushes in, causing a massive explosion. The roof of the nuclear plant is on fire and the core of the reactor is burning. It is the greatest nuclear power plant disaster to occur ever in the world, and it was all too preventable.
Oh, so preventable. I love that, yeah, it's 30,000 megawatts, but it could have potentially been a lot higher. That's just the last reading that they got.
Yeah, that's just the last thing.
It definitely got higher than that.
Yeah, that's just insanity. Like,
Well, it's just spinning out of control. It's just a feedback loop.
You're right. It's just incompetence after incompetence, like just poor decision making, and a lot of scared people who under Dyatlov who were just doing what he was telling them to do because they didn't know what to do.
Well, it's the Soviet Union. If you don't do what your superior tells you, you get a bullet. Like, you know.
Yeah, you don't know how bad it could get. Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
right. You have no choice.
I think I know where I'm talking about the show here, but the show does a really good, job of emphasizing that tense feeling of, Dyatlov being this overarching sort of bad guy. Like, they cast brilliantly because everyone else is like sort of scared, and he's like, "Oh, you'll never work in another power plant again if you don't do what I fucking tell you to do." And it's like, I imagine it wasn't that far off it, because these guys would have been like, "Oh shit, we're not 100% sure, and he's telling us, and we're like, we don't think it's the right thing, but fuck it, we'll do it anyway because we don't want to lose our jobs." And
do you guys feel just a tiny bit bad for Dyatlov in the sense though that he was thinking, all right, we'll just do the test, we'll fucking get it to work, and if for some reason it's not working and something goes wrong, we'll just press a shut off button because that's the failsafe.
Yeah, well, he obviously had faith in AZ5, the button that stops it all, but he still made some pretty poor decisions, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a sliver of me feeling bad for him because, he knew that what he was doing was potentially going to lead to, some sort of meltdown, but he was like, "Oh, I've always got the fallback."
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
He never thought have the fallback. Like, that's the...
Yeah, he never thought that the reactor was going to explode no matter what he did.
Mm.
Or did he? We'll talk about that later.
I feel like slightly, like just a sliver of badness.
Yeah, I mean, like he...
Like, you shouldn't be fucking around with
He created
that
the
shit.
conditions for it to melt down.
That's right. It is hard to feel sorry for a communist, though.
Oh, God.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just a series of bad decisions, one after the other. Like, there were so many times in that sequence that I described, there are so many times where they should have cancelled the test or just said, like, all right, we'll do it next week. Or, it's just there are so many times where it should have stopped, but instead they were like, no, we failed this test 3 times before. We haven't been able to get the desired output, or the desired result, so let's just fucking push through. Let's make sure we can get it, tick the box, and, if everything goes wrong, we just hit the button.
Yeah. 3rd time's the charm.
4th time. But yeah, in episode 5 of the miniseries, the last episode, the main character does a good job of explaining what went wrong in the reactor and explaining how, there's this balance going on between things that increase reactivity and things that decrease reactivity, and they had totally pushed it to the limit where everything that decreases activity was all of a sudden out of the core.
Yeah, it was all removed all at once.
Just like gonna go off like that. So
yeah,
fucking crazy shit. All right, so let's talk about the immediate aftermath. So there was a evacuation to take place, but they were slow to evacuate because it was initially believed that the fire on the roof was the main issue, and once it was put out, things would be fine. The Soviet government decided to send a couple of nuclear scientists, a meteorologist, and a radiologist to check out the plant, and they arrived in the evening of April 26, about 18 hours after the explosion. They quickly determined that the entire reactor had been completely destroyed and unsafe levels of radiation were spreading throughout the city. They suggested an immediate evacuation. But, not wanting to rush to any conclusions, though, the communist government decided to sleep on it. In the morning, they sent buses to evacuate the nearby town of Pripyat, and evacuations began at 2 p.m. on April 27, more than 37 hours after the explosion.
Ugh.
The subjects were told to only bring what they needed since it would be a short-term evacuation. The plan was to evacuate for 3 days, but that was 33 years ago. They have never been allowed to return. The next day, the government expanded the evacuation zone to a radius of 10 kilometers. Then a week later, it was extended to 30 kilometers. Initially, 135,000 people were forced to evacuate and would never return. Over the next 15 years, the contamination zone increased, and in total, 350,000 people were resettled.
Oh, that is outrageous.
Yeah, there's, nuclear debris floating through the atmosphere, and 37 hours later you leave town. That's not good.
Too little, too late.
Yeah. Yep. They shit the bed on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, really. Yeah, and something that happened in episode 4 of the Chernobyl miniseries was that there were these men tasked with going around these abandoned cities after they'd been evacuated and shooting all the animals in there.
Oh.
That's something that actually happened. So when they did evacuate, they were told to leave their pets behind. They were told because it's a short-term evacuation, you can't take your pets. But really, they didn't want to tell people, leave your pets behind because we're going to come through and kill them. Because then
we're going to have to kill them because they're so irradiated.
Yeah, people would be trying to sneak their pets out and stuff. So they said, leave your pets behind because it's a short-term evacuation and, there's no time for whatever. So then these animal death squads eventually moved in and they were tasked with killing all the animals in Pripyat before they started wandering off from the city and spreading the contamination. Because, these dogs would just move out further and further and then carry the radiation with them. So,
and they'd be eating irradiated animals and it'd just be a whole clusterfuck.
Must have been weird for Soviet death squads to be killing animals instead of, people.
Yeah.
God.
It's probably like a holiday for them.
Yeah, I guess.
I was going to say, it's probably like one of the most depressing parts of the series. It's just, this is your job now. We've taken you off the street. You were like a 18-year-old just out of school or whatever. We've signed you up, and your job is go around and shoot dogs all day. Like, fucking hell, what a shit job. What a shit life.
It'd be rough.
Well, it was either that or go serve in Afghanistan, so,
Yeah, sure.
What do you do?
To be honest, I don't know which one of the roles that were involved, like, in the cleanup process that I would have wanted to do if I had to choose, like shooting animals, liquidators, none of it seems like it's a win at all.
Well, you go to Afghanistan and that was the choice they were offered. Either you do, I think it was 2 weeks as a liquidator, or you go serve in Afghanistan and potentially never come back.
Oh, God.
I don't know. It's just such a shit situation.
Yeah, what a mess.
In hindsight, Afghanistan was probably the better option, but at the time,
No.
If you're given the choice, you're going to say, all right, I'll just do this shitty job for 2 weeks and then I'm free and clear.
Yeah.
All right. So, the Soviets initially were all hush-hush about the incident until Sweden...
What a surprise.
Sweden detected some nuclear radiation. So in the morning of April 28, just over 2 days after the explosion, an alarm went off at Forsmark nuclear power plant in Sweden, 1,000 kilometers away from Chernobyl.
Oh.
The Swedish Radiation Safety Authority determined that the radiation had originated elsewhere, and so the Swedish government contacted the Soviets to figure out what the hell was going on. The Soviets initially denied an accident and only admitted to it when the Swedish government said they were going to report their findings to the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Mm. Yeah, I think you'd really need to force the Soviets, Cold War era Soviets, to admit anything, because they're like, we're fucking perfect, we don't make mistakes.
Oh, if it wasn't for another country detecting the radiation, we probably wouldn't know about it today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
wouldn't have known about it at the time. It would have been something that came out later, or it would have been rumours about it, but nothing
like
confirmed
Tiananmen Square or something like that.
Yeah. Kind of all hush-hush, but it's inside the Soviet Union, their citizens didn't know what was going on as well. So imagine what it was like to live in the Soviet Union. A nuclear power plant disaster occurs, the likes of which the world has never seen, and over 100,000 people are evacuated from their homes. The contamination is spreading, animals are being left in the zone and will eventually have to be killed. Work is underway by brave men and women to contain the disaster. Some of them know their work is a death sentence, many of them do not. As a subject of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, however, you don't know any of this. The only information that you are given comes as a 20-second announcement on the evening news almost 3 days after the explosion. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. One of the nuclear reactors was damaged. That's right, damaged. The effects of the accident are being remedied. Assistance has been provided for any affected people. An investigative commission has been set up. End of story. That's it.
I mean, all of that is technically correct.
But that's all
the
you
best
get.
kind of correct, technically.
Yeah.
That's all you get. 3 days after the accident, and that's what you're told. Just like the very bare minimum. Like, yes, something happened. You've heard the rumours. Something happened. Don't worry about it.
And we wonder why the USSR collapsed.
Yeah, no, it's just...
And this is... People today want to go back to communism. Like, this is how you're treated under a communist regime. It's
the information
what they want you to know.
That's right.
It's great.
I don't want to get all political.
Well,
but communism sucks.
It's interesting that
that's just a fact.
The only newspaper in the country was the state-sanctioned official newspaper called Pravda, which translates as the truth. So every day, the only newspaper you're allowed to read was just like the one that told you everything's fine and we have it
Isn't
great.
Isn't that what Elon Musk wanted to call his website that was going to call out fake news and...
Yeah, I think it was.
Roast journalists for publishing bullshit? He was going to call it Pravda?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
What a shitlord.
But this is also the guy that created a flamethrower and called it not a flamethrower.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was to get around stupid regulations. You can't sell something called a flamethrower, but you can sell a flamethrower that's called something else.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but that's the sort of control that they had over everything, and you wouldn't know what was actually going on. It would be a lot of guessing and a lot of stuff like that, but you wouldn't actually know what was really happening.
Yeah, it's all in the shadows, and you only know what they want you to know.
Exactly.
And, it's shady shit.
It's some very shady shit.
Yeah. All right. So one of the big parts in the show, or one of the big scenes in the show, is about 3 guys who went into some radioactive water. So the core was burning so hot that it started burning through the reactor floor and through the concrete below, creating a substance that is kind of like a radioactive lava. Given enough time, this lava would eventually burn through all of the concrete and start leaking into the giant reservoir of water underneath. Apparently, if this had happened, there could have been a steam explosion that, at worst, could have taken out half of Europe. I've read that this concern is a bit of an exaggeration because the lava would melt in to the water unevenly and therefore the blast wouldn't be anywhere near as big. But it was really dangerous, and it could have taken out nearby Kiev and potentially even Minsk in Belarus.
Well, I mean, there was also 3 other reactors there that you probably don't want to have issues with as well. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the pool of water could only be drained by manually opening some valves in the basement, and so 3 brave men were tasked with going in there, wading through the radioactive water and finding these valves to open them up. In the TV
Balls
show...
of steel.
In the TV show, it seems that the plant workers were given full knowledge of the dangers of what they were being asked to do, and 3 brave men volunteer. However, one of those men, an engineer called Alexei Ananenko, who is still alive, says that he was ordered to go in by his manager and did it because he didn't want to get fired. He also said that he was not offered a reward, nor did they receive any applause on their successful return, 2 things that were depicted in the TV show. It was just
That's communism, baby.
It was just our work, he said. Who would applaud that? So I think you really got to hand it to this Ananenko guy. He was portrayed as this badass hero who waded through radioactive water to save all of Europe with reckless disregard for his own health. And instead of being like, yeah, sure, that's me. I'm a fucking hero. Instead, he's like, they made me do it, and I didn't realize it was such a big deal.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know what was happening. They just told me to do it, so I did it.
Obviously, he didn't want to lose his job. What job? If you look at reactor number 4 in that building, you go, yeah, I'll be back here on Monday. Like, what? No.
He was like, nah, I'll take care of reactor 3. That was fun.
That scene in the show is really tense because you got like the noise of the Geiger counters or decimeters, as they call them.
Yeah,
just getting like louder and louder, and it's like,
and
just,
then the torches and
it's a good sound effect.
It just makes the torches go out, and it's just like your heart's racing, and then it just cuts to black in the credits, and you don't know what happened.
Yeah, excellently made show.
Good cliffhanger,
fantastic TV show. And as Morg said, we're not talking about the TV show. Like everything we're talking about actually happened, but the TV show is just a very good point of reference.
Yeah, very good depiction.
I mean, this
might not be 100% accurate, but it's a very good depiction.
This is something that happened in 1986, and we think all the crazy shit that's happened in history, that not much of it is actually available in color photographs and color video and stuff like that. You can't really see what happened in World War II that well. You can't see what happened in World War I basically at all, and the Boer War and stuff like that. Like these big events in history, but you think Chernobyl actually was only 30 years ago. Like there is plenty of footage about this sort of stuff, but it's hard to convince someone to watch like a factual documentary with archive footage of news and camera crews and stuff like that who have taken these videos. It's going to be hard to get someone to watch a documentary about that. But when you dramatize it and make it, really accessible like this show, then you can make something which is true, really interesting and more easily digestible. So
absolutely.
Yeah, if you just cherry pick the cool shit, basically.
Yeah, and I think that the good thing about the miniseries is that they took great pains to make it as accurate as they could while still telling a story. So, like the stuff I've researched for this, I was always like, that was in the TV show, but did it actually happen? And there are very few things that they changed in the show, or very few things that they dramatized. And I think this was one of the very few things that they did, is that they presented this radioactive water task as a little bit different to how it actually
they were trying to make the guys look like heroes.
Which is fair enough.
And I think that's fair because they are heroes. They just didn't realize at the time what they were doing.
They might not have had full knowledge, and they might have been doing it less as a self-sacrifice, like we're going to die, but we need to do it anyway, and more of a, well, we have to do it because we're told to do it, and we're told it's not as unsafe as it probably is.
Yeah, when the party tells you to do something, you do it.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely a very heroic endeavor. I probably would have just quit. Said, nah. I'm going to try my hand escaping to the west.
I don't know if you were planning on mentioning ones, but 2 of the 3 gentlemen who did that ridiculous task were still alive, and the third one only died in wasn't a super long time
Yeah,
ago as well.
the other one died not too long ago, and it was from heart failure. It wasn't from like a cancer caused by radiation or something. So yeah, all three of them came out pretty well, actually.
Yeah, surprising.
Which is crazy because water is like absorbs radiation so well. And it was like they were directly under the reactor.
And they were basically just in scuba suits.
Yeah, it boggles the mind how they managed to like survive at all, let alone not die immediately.
Yeah, I think the main character in the show was saying something like they're not going to last 3 days or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the idea that they might not. Something else people had to do was clean up the roof of Chernobyl because it was littered with radioactive graphite, which was emitting radioactive dust into the atmosphere. And the Soviets tried to use robots to remove this graphite, but the robots kept breaking down due to the nuclear exposure. Therefore, they decided to use bio-robots instead, as they called them, otherwise known as humans. They did this instead of asking the US to give them robots that could handle that amount of radiation, which the US had. So over 3,800 men were forced to go onto the roof in protective gear for a maximum of 90 seconds each, picking up pieces of graphite with shovels and throwing them off the roof.
Another super intense scene from that show. That is possibly one of the best scenes I've ever seen shot. 90 seconds, dead silence except for the decimeter or Geiger counter, whatever you want to call it. Yep. And just this guy running around trying to pick up chunks with a shovel, and it is just brutal. Like, so well shot, and I could imagine that the real circumstances were very, very similar to that. Like, you get to that roof and you got 90 seconds, get the fuck out of there, you stay around, that's it. You're fucking done, man.
This is one of the few things, actually, that is... you can watch the footage of, and it's very, very similar to the show. Like, you can watch footage of the guy describing to these soldiers what you have to do. Like, they're all standing there in gear, and he's saying to them, look, you have to go onto the roof and do this. This is where you're going. This is what you're doing. You have 90 seconds, and then they all run out there. So you can actually watch on YouTube people gearing up to do this like it's shown in the TV show. So it's very creepy, and the TV show is very... similar to that, to what you can see on YouTube for that. It's just fucking crazy.
Yeah, I just don't know how fucking terrified I would be at that moment. Like, you're standing.
I think it's probably similar to the guys who are in the water. I very much doubt it was fully explained to them just how dangerous it was.
It would have been. Well, I mean, it'd be dangerous if you stay in all longer.
That gear. They get you in all that gear up on that roof. You're wearing like rubber smocks. And they're telling you got 90 seconds. You got to know, like, even if it's not implicitly stated, you have to know that what you're walking out into is fucking dangerous.
You mean explicitly stated?
Explicitly so.
Yeah.
Either way, you know what I mean. Though, like, you have to, you've picked up on that. Like, this is
you know it's dangerous, but I don't think they knew how dangerous.
Yeah. On the other hand, I'm
because
sure these aren't
these people have grown up under communism. They're not the most well-educated people in the world. They don't know what radiation is.
No, but they would have been told, always trust your superiors and stuff like that. And I'm sure they would have told them, look, yes, it is dangerous if you stay out there for 2 minutes, but 90 seconds is totally fine. Like, it's either it's like a binary. It's like it's either safe or not safe. And if you before the 2 minutes, you're totally safe. They probably would have been telling him stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or they would have just said, you're a Soviet citizen, you have to do this. Fucking do it.
Yeah, this is your duty.
Yeah. So
if you don't do it, we'll kill you and we'll kill your family.
So in total, over 600,000 men were tasked with cleaning up the effects of the effects of the meltdown, and these men came to be known as liquidators. They cleaned in and around the nuclear power plant. They shot animals, lifted up all the topsoil in the evacuation area, and attempted to clean up the contaminated areas. Very few of these people had adequate protection, and reports of how many died and how many became ill vary wildly. We'll never know exactly how many were affected, but Brad's going to tell us a bit about the possible death counts.
Well,
I just want to say,
jump in.
Brad said this a few days ago when we were talking about recording this episode, that if you can commend the Soviet Union for anything, it is their willingness and ability to just throw bodies at a problem until it goes away.
Yeah. It's spot on. Like, the level of disinformation or lack of information provided to people to get them to do this. Yeah. You would not be able to have an effort like this in the Western world. It's as simple as that. Self-preservation is way too high.
Hardly any other country. Maybe only China. China is maybe the only other country where something like that could happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, communism sucks, but I commend their level to throw away human life to clean up a problem.
Well, there's that really dark joke that was like, Stalin knew he was going to win World War II when he realized he had more men than Hitler had bullets.
Yeah. That's not wrong either. That's 100% accurate.
I can't read stuff like that when you hear about how they just were running in without guns and stuff like that. It's fucking disgusting.
It is terrible. I mean, told if they turn around, they'll be shot by them.
Fuck the Soviet Union. Fuck it to death. I'm so glad it's gone.
Well, anyway.
And yet there is a resurgence of people supporting communism.
Yeah, Lachlan's right.
Why?
They don't know.
I'm incredibly worried about it.
Yeah.
All right, Brad, tell us about the death toll.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the death toll, the short answer is that we really don't know. The issue with calculating the death toll...
You work for the Soviets as well.
I'm going to explain this in detail, so just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, right? Come
on. When calculating the death toll with any large disaster, the victims who survived the initial wave of destruction can get mixed in and lost with the general population statistics. What is particularly tricky with radiation exposure, like Chernobyl or Fukushima Daiichi, is that the effects are so wide and varied, it's next to impossible to definitively say whatever killed someone was or was not related to the disaster at Chernobyl. That being said, we can break down the victims into two categories, acute radiation exposure and chronic radiation exposure. Victims of acute radiation exposure receive high doses of radiation for only a very short period of time, whereas chronic radiation exposure is much, much lower doses, but for a much greater period. So we have the numbers for those who received acute radiation poisoning, and those usually experience death in a couple of weeks, sometimes months. Those numbers are 2 plant workers who were killed in the initial explosion, 29 firefighters who were killed from radiation and poisoning while attempting to put out the initial fire, and finally a further 24 plant staff and firefighters in the following months. These 54 deaths are the widely accepted toll after the initial blast. All right? So there you go, 54. That's your number on the day and in the following months.
Yep.
For those who received chronic radiation exposure, such as army staff, liquidators, miners, nearby residents, the long-term death toll is much harder to determine and is highly debated. The issue in determining this figure is threefold, boys. Threefold. Right? Firstly, the sheer number of people exposed. Right? There appears to have been approximately 800,000 people living in affected areas. So not necessarily evacuated, but people who could have faced some kind of exposure. Couple that with approximately 600,000 liquidators and army personnel brought in for the cleanup. Tracking the health outcomes of all these people becomes a monumental task in and of itself. So that's first issue. The second issue you need to face is determining if the people in the affected areas were exposed and to what levels. We're all exposed to radiation every day and it's perfectly normal. The issue is when we're exposed to ionizing radiation. This can damage atoms at a molecular level, and even low doses can alter our DNA, causing genomic instability. Determining the amount of radiation everyone was exposed to is as varied as the people themselves. So some people handle radiation better, some handle it worse. Body size plays a part, and even just sheer luck. So sometimes if you are exposed, even if you get a higher level than someone, might not happen. Like you might have no ill effects, but the person who got a lower dose will have worse effects. It's just fucking random. And finally, the hardest part of determining the death toll is the sheer number of ways in which radiation can kill you. As I said earlier, it's next to impossible to determine if someone's leukemia or coronary damage is a direct result of ionizing radiation or just biological predisposition. One disease that can be tracked is thyroid cancer because it's extremely rare outside of those exposed to radiation. Unfortunately, there have been 15 deaths from thyroid cancer linked to Chernobyl. All children, as they are much more susceptible to thyroid issues. But there have been also 4,000 cases of thyroid cancer, but with a 99% survival rate, so that's actually not too bad. So, How do we get the numbers of the expected death toll then? Well, some smart dudes who used Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a baseline developed the linear no-threshold model for predicting cancer rates in an exposed population. Essentially, it cuts out all the presumed people who have been exposed to very low levels of radiation and uses people in a higher bracket who are more likely to have negative outcomes and predicts an approximate number of people likely to die as a result. So, been going on for a while, so I'll hit you with the big enchilada. Depending on whose number you use and what parameters for inclusion and exclusion into the linear no-threshold model are applied, the expected death toll is anywhere from 4,000 people to 200,000 people due to chronic radiation exposure. So while I was looking through the numbers myself, I expect that the real number is unlikely to ever be discovered. And I also suspect that it will lay somewhere in the middle of those two numbers, so between 4,000 and 200,000. So it'll still be a very significant number of people. There also will definitely be a spike in cancers in the Ukraine, Belarus, and Russian areas affected. And we won't see a true indication on how close the numbers are for probably the next 30 years. That's just how it's going to be. It's going to be a long-term thing. Basically, what it comes down to is that there are also a lot of interested parties with an agenda, and their numbers line up with their agenda. Yeah. So there are organizations who are looking for funding and resources for victims, and their numbers are often in the tens or even hundreds of thousands. You have atomic energy interested parties who are often looking to save face and prevent atomic panic, so their numbers are often in the thousands. And finally, you have Russia, who looks to remain steadfast on the world stage, and their number has not changed since 1987, and it's 31.
Oh.
Yeah.
So basically, that's the death toll right there. It's really, really, really fucking hard to get any kind of consensus on the numbers. Because literally the way radiation kills you as well is just so varied. It's just crazy, man. I was looking into it.
It can hit you in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's not just cancer as well. That's the thing, is they used Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a baseline, but that was a nuclear explosion, not a waves of pulsating radiation. So it affects you in different ways. Like, you can have just organ failures from it, and heart disease and stuff like that. Like they can all be brought about by radiation sickness, and they can just go off at any time. Cesium-135, I think it is, likes to act as a potassium molecule in your body, so it can sit latent in your body for decades, and then just gets activated one day and bam, cancer out the wazoo. So yeah, it's just crazy. There's probably no way we'll know the real number, but yeah, in the next 30 to 40 years, we'll probably have a better idea of how many people have been affected.
Yeah, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but it ties in well to what Brad's talking about now. Somewhere between 400 and 450 children per year born to people who were in the exclusion zone when Reactor 4 exploded have some form of cancer or genetic disorder today. So, that's obviously disproportionately high compared to any other population.
Yeah.
But it's as you said, Brad, it's almost always thyroid issues.
Yeah. Thyroid is very susceptible to radiation, and that's why you'll see in the show, and anywhere there's a radiation thing, they'll tell you to take iodine pills because they flush out ionizing radiation. Yeah, and they flush out the thyroid.
But it's just it blew my mind when I saw that number, because this is children who weren't conceived
at the time
when the explosion happened, or even in the aftermath. This is this is
new
5,
kids.
10, 15-year-old children now.
Yeah.
Born to people who were exposed to that radiation. It's affected them at a genetic level.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about, the genomic instability. It doesn't necessarily cause cancer, but those mutations and
it
everything
fucks
like
up
that.
your DNA at a structural level, and it's likely that these kids will pass these issues on to their children. So you're going to have the grandchildren of Chernobyl survivors still having these genetic disorders and thyroid cancer.
That's where X-Men come from. I'm looking forward to superheroes who can swim super fast because they've got webbed fingers and feet and shit. Maybe they get gills. I don't know, but maybe there'll be a silver lining to this Chernobyl death cloud.
Yeah, if you were there, you would have run towards the reactor when it happened.
Yeah, comic books have lied to us.
They definitely fucking have.
All right. Lachlan, do you want to tell us what's going on today with Chernobyl, the lingering effects, and the geographically what's going on?
Yeah. So, as I just said, the children born to people who were there are still suffering problems. As far as the radiation levels go, so the exclusion zone still exists, the 30 kilometres around Reactor 4. The radiation levels in the exclusion zone are still dangerous for long-term exposure, but obviously they've dropped considerably since the disaster. There's thousands of people who work in the exclusion zone. They're still cleaning up, decommissioning the power plant. They live and work in the exclusion zone for 3 weeks at a time, and then 3 weeks they must leave the exclusion zone. So they work 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, and their 3 weeks off they have to leave that 30 kilometre radius just to, I guess, let their body process the radiation. So Russia today still operates 10 of the RBMK reactors, which is what Reactor 4 was that blew up an RBMK reactor. Mm-hmm. I say Russia, I talk about Russia. Chernobyl is in Ukraine, and that's where it happened. But at the time, under the USSR, they were essentially
this one country.
State.
Yeah,
yeah, like it was the same government running them all, and it's it's essentially the Russians that were responsible for it. So they still operate 10 of these RBMK reactors today, but the fault that caused the explosion, so the graphite tips on the cooling rods, has been fixed on those reactors.
Or so they say.
And I was quite shocked by this, but reactors 1 to 3 at Chernobyl kept operating after the disaster.
You are kidding me.
I had just assumed that they would shut all of it down straight away. Like after
that would be the power plant fucking smart thing to do.
Explodes and, causes nuclear radiation for fucking nearly all of Europe. I actually saw, I'll find this. I didn't get the link, but I'll find it again. We'll put it in the description. There's a really good GIF showing the spread of the radiation over the few days after the explosion.
Yeah.
Because it goes up into the atmosphere, and from there it just spreads like crazy. It covered all of Europe, a good chunk of Russia, some of China. It reached to Africa. That's how much the radiation spread. And obviously, by that stage, the levels weren't you're not going to find any people in Africa who suffered any ill effects from that radiation, but that's how far it went.
Yeah. Gotta love living in the southern hemisphere, baby.
Yeah, that's right. None of that shit going on down here. Nothing bad has ever happened in the southern hemisphere. Especially not in South Africa. So Reactor 2 was shut down in 1991 after it caught fire.
Oh. Oh my god, that's 2 out of 4. You have a fucking terrible hit right there.
Obviously, though, it did not explode like Reactor 4 did, because I guess they'd put more competent people in charge by that point,
They still let it catch fire. Fucking hell.
Reactor 1 was shut down in 1996 as part of an international deal with Ukraine to end operation of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. God knows why it took that long to strike a deal. And Reactor 3 was shut down just in the year 2000. So only, I say just in the year 2000, that's nearly 20 years ago now, but it doesn't feel like that long ago.
So, 14 years after the explosion, they finally shut down.
Yeah, 14 years later, they shut the whole plant down.
Oh, fuck me. That is just asking for trouble.
Yeah, so as I said, the exclusion zone still exists, and it's called the exclusion zone. You're not allowed there, but it has become somewhat of a tourist hotspot. And I, no pun intended with hotspot there. So it's part of a trend called dark tourism, which is visiting places that are historically historically associated with death or tragedy. So, like, people go to Auschwitz, they go to Hiroshima, Ground Zero in New York, all that sort of thing.
Fields.
People visit these. Yeah, people visit these really
Dark places.
Macabre.
You know, macabre. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right. Wordsmith.
Yeah. So there's a few companies that do tours into the exclusion zone in Chernobyl. Some charge like 500-600 euros a day. The best I've found is around $130 Australian a day.
Yeah, but there's no guarantees they get you back out. That's with that kind of price.
So tours range from 1 to 7 days. On multi-day tours, you stay in a hotel in the exclusion zone, which boasts Soviet-style accommodations. So, yeah, they say specifically that, you know, don't expect all the mod cons. This is a hotel that has not been updated since everyone was evacuated.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure they've washed the sheets and stuff.
You'd hope so.
Probably not.
There's one TV.
Wouldn't be
in the
true
entire
Soviet
hotel.
accommodation if they'd fucking washed their sheets.
So they guide you around Chernobyl and Pripyat. You get to see the nuclear power plant from a special viewing area. It's about 200 meters away from Reactor 4. And you get to see Chernobyl 2, where Duga 1 is. More on that later. You also get to meet and talk to some of the Samosli, or self-settlers. So they are people who have either returned to or never left the exclusion zone.
Oh.
So even though you're not allowed to live there, some people snuck back to their villages and continued living there.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, early estimates had as many as 10,000 people living in there. As of 2016,
they're all fucking dead now?
As of 2016, there was less than 180
left.
Yeah.
living inside the
Sounds about
exclusion
fucking
zone.
right.
Yeah, and there is only... The inner 10 kilometres is called something else. I can't remember
Death
what
zone.
it's called inside the exclusion zone.
Isn't it called like the strict zone or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah.
The alienation zone, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Because you'll turn into a fucking alien.
It'll be all green and glowing.
Yeah, there's actually two people, a very old couple, I think they're in their 90s now, who live inside that 10 kilometres.
Oh. Is that the lady whose cow got shot in the show? Spoilers.
And the Ukrainian government actually they've said now, look, the really old people who are living there, we'll let them live there, but anyone, I think if you're younger than like 40, they will boot you out. You've got to get out of there, I guess, because you've still got a life to live.
Yeah.
And these old people, it doesn't matter. The radiation's not going to kill them before something else does.
Yeah.
So on these tours, you have to wear long sleeves and pants and fully enclosed shoes. None of your belongings are allowed to make direct contact with the ground, and your shoes need to be decontaminated before you leave the exclusion zone. You're not allowed to touch anything. It's like
sounds fun.
They recommend specifically, they're like, you're allowed to bring a tripod for your camera, but you have to put like plastic bags around the 3 feet so it doesn't actually touch the ground.
Oh my god.
Tour operators recommend you buy a dosimeter to take with you on the tour, or you can rent one for the low price of €10 per day. They say it's so you can get a real feel of, how the radiation has affected the area. I think it's probably a legal requirement or something like that.
Yeah.
They claim that if you take one of these tours, you'll be exposed to less radiation than you are on a transatlantic flight. Because being that high up in the atmosphere, you're more exposed to radiation from space.
Part of me thinks that they're wrong.
Well, yeah, this website is called it's chornobyltour.com because it's Ukrainian and they spell it Chernobyl.
Yes,
the whole website's written in very broken English, so they could probably claim that it's a lost in translation. They're saying you will receive more radiation than a transatlantic flight.
No money down.
Indeed.
You've got to sign a waiver stating that you will not hold the tour operators responsible for any of your belongings becoming contaminated or any health issues caused by exposure to radiation.
Yeah, but you'll get less than a transatlantic flight.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, fuck off. You're trying to sell me something. Of course I'm gonna fall for that shit. I don't get off a plane with fucking cancer. God. Fucking cunt.
You have to apply for a permit to enter the exclusion zone at least 10 business days in advance. I did find one tour operator who advertises being able to get you in with only 1 day notice.
Ooh, that's some shady shit.
I don't know whether they've got the authorities in their pocket or whether they just sneak you in.
Oh, they are greasing some Ukrainian pockets,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, there, aren't they?
You can also take a private tour inside the power plant itself. The closest you get to Reactor 4 is the control room, where all the shit went down.
Oh, God.
You're only allowed inside the power plant for a maximum of 2 hours, and you must wear like proper protective radiation suits. I couldn't find prices for that because it's only for professionals, atomic students, and specialists.
Yeah. I've seen a bunch of videos on YouTube from people doing that kind of stuff, and they all seem to be of the field.
Yeah, you have to be, otherwise they won't let you in. And I guess
it's not like Instagram thoughts who are like, I want to get some clout.
It's funny you mentioned that because obviously since the HBO show got popular, a lot of people have been visiting Chernobyl. And the show's creator has like put out a public plea asking people not to like take selfies and post them on their Instagrams. Just like, have some fucking respect and remember all the people that died there.
Yeah.
Because people are just taking fucking, classic
selfies.
Instagram selfies and being very disrespectful. So they get around 17,000 visitors per year to the exclusion zone. Or I'm sure this year and probably next year that'll be much, much higher.
Yeah, so 17,000 is still higher than I expected. I would have thought
it is.
maybe.
It's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, just a few days before recording this, signed a decree laying out plans to make Chernobyl more accessible to tourists.
Is he the guy? Is he the guy who was like this hunk actor who played a president on TV and then became president?
I don't know.
Yeah,
but I hope so.
he was.
It sounds fucking awesome.
He was playing the president of Ukraine. Hilariously enough, he was playing.
Oh no, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was playing a role on television where he was a teacher and he gave some political rant in the classroom, and one of his students filmed it. It went viral, and everybody said, "You need to run for president," and voted him in to become the president. And then the actor ran for president in real life and became president.
Oh shit! Yeah, you're right. Actually.
Oh my god!
I just googled it really quickly. Ukrainian politician, screenwriter, actor, comedian, and director, serving as the sixth president of Ukraine.
Oh my god!
Anyway, no training, but
but he's like, let's just throw open the gates to Chernobyl, boys.
Yeah,
that's right. He did mention that he wants to regulate it a lot better because he knows that there's a lot of public corruption happening in and around the exclusion zone.
I don't see how you're going to turn that into like a viable tourist attraction when it kills you if you stay
well,
there.
I think the town of Pripyat, which was evacuated, it's like a time capsule of the Soviet Union. So there's no other place in the Soviet Union which is exactly the same as it was in the 1980s. Whereas this place,
except for every other city
in
Russia,
in this place, everybody left on one day, and thinking they were going to come back. So they left things the way they were, and then nobody ever came back. So it is a perfect time capsule.
Literally nothing has been touched. It's perfectly
It's incredibly
preserved.
fucking creepy, any photo you see.
It is very creepy.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there's still papers on the floor. You can see the kindergartens where where the little kids were, you know, they just got up and walked out, their homework still on the table, that sort of thing. It's exactly like you said, Morgs. It's a time capsule. And it is the only place in the world where you can see exactly what the Soviet Union looked like.
There's one thing I noticed as well. I was looking through a lot of photos of Pripyat, and you know the very famous pool that they have there? You know, in that room. You'll notice that in the pool there's graffiti, and I just want to say the stones on those kids to sneak into in a radiated zone and graffiti a pool, like, What the fuck, man?
That's punk.
Yeah, that pool has one of the highest radiation readings inside the zone today. So
Yeah. I just
yeah.
can't believe that. That's fucking outrageous.
Well, they're probably retards if they're graffitiing other people.
Well, they're probably fucking
pretty
dead
fucking
retards
stupid.
now.
Hopefully.
Deserved it. Okay, Lachlan, do you want to tell us about the conspiracy theories?
Oh, do I?
Hit us with these,
All
bad
right,
boys.
let's do it.
All right. So, obviously, this has been a very dark topic. So I want to make it even darker by telling you just what the government did to these people. So first I need to explain about, I said before, you can visit Duga 1 at Chernobyl 2. So I just need to explain what that is. So Duga 1 was or still is, I guess, a massive antenna array at a secret site called Chernobyl 2, which is inside the exclusion zone. It's not very far from the nuclear power plant. And it was built by the Soviets to track missile launches up to 2,500 kilometers away as part of their early warning ballistic missile system, because obviously the Cold War was going on, tensions were a little bit high at the time. So that, they built this massive array of antennas, and that's really impressive. I'd encourage people to look it up on the internet, because it's just this giant fucking wall of antennas. So when Duga 1 was put into full operation in the mid-70s, it started generating radio interference, which sounded like this. So,
like a
for those who
helicopter.
it does sound like a helicopter. That's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was a helicopter.
Yeah, but for those who don't know, a big antenna means big power. Due to Duga 1's immense size, this interference was heard on radio receivers around the world. Amateur radio hobbyists almost immediately triangulated the signal and tracked its source to somewhere inside Ukraine. Quickly became known as the Russian woodpecker.
Oh.
So basically Gorbachev was like, "I'll fuck with these priests." Until this giant array of antennas just to fuck with hobbyists.
Well, no, the interference wasn't intentional. That was, the
It's
Soviets
just a happy
didn't.
accident.
Soviets
Fucking
didn't
Bob
have
Ross
the
shit.
best engineers. The whole thing was meant to be a secret. So the fact that, straight away, as soon as they brought it online, basically people figured out where it was. They didn't know what it was, but they knew something really fucking big was generating radio interference inside Ukraine.
Okay.
They called it the Russian woodpecker. For a period in the late 70s and early 80s, you could actually buy radios with a special chip in them that generated the opposite to the waves that the woodpecker generated. So it would cancel out and you wouldn't get that interference.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good.
They were called woodpecker hunters. So, that's what you need to know about Duga 1 and Chernobyl 2. Secret town to house a secret radio antenna array that was a really big failure.
Yeah.
Because immediately, as soon as they turned it on, the whole world knew about it.
Presumably it was powered by Chernobyl.
I don't know, but I would imagine so.
Yeah, okay. I know him.
So the first conspiracy theory, or conspiracy truth, you might say, is that the disaster at Chernobyl was engineered by the USSR to give them an excuse to shut down Duga 1, the massive failure that they had poured 7 billion rubles into.
Oh, yeah, they don't like failing, do they?
That's right. They don't like failing, and even more so, they don't like admitting their failings. So, instead of say, yep, we built this and it doesn't work like how we wanted to, we'll just shut it down and call it a day. The theory is that they thought, hang on, what if we fucking made one of the reactors at the power plant explode, and then, people aren't allowed inside the exclusion zone, we can't operate it anymore, we'll just have to shut it down.
Another Bob Ross happy accident.
That's such bullshit. We're too embarrassed to admit that we failed with something, so we're just going to fucking create the worst nuclear power plant accident in history, because that's less
right.
embarrassing. Come on, Lachlan.
Well, if no one finds out about it.
The next theory, and this is also to do with Duga 1,
Hopefully more plausible.
is that Duga... probably. Is that Duga 1 wasn't built to track missile launches, but to actually launch missiles that were being built underneath Chernobyl. And that the explosion of Reactor 4 was caused by CIA agents who had infiltrated the power plant. They sabotaged the reactor, causing it to explode.
Damn Americans.
So, whether the part about the missiles is true or not, I've no qualms believing that the CIA would intentionally cause the worst nuclear disaster in history. That
not on American soil.
Would not come as a surprise to me at all if I found out that were true. It probably wouldn't be the worst thing the CIA has ever done either. Probably a whole episode in that. Atrocities committed by the CIA. And funnily enough, the Russians are actually making a TV series in response to HBO's Chernobyl.
Telling the truth.
It takes the position that the CIA did it.
No.
So, I don't think you could say that's their official position on it, but they are producing a TV show that says that that's what happened.
That's fucking amazing.
There's also a theory that the KGB caused the reactor to explode in order to instill fear of nuclear power throughout the world and keep Europe dependent on Russia for energy. Again, wouldn't be surprised if the KGB purposely killed a bunch of their own citizens. Interestingly, if that is true, it fucking worked, because as of 2017, Russia was responsible for around 60% of the EU's energy product.
Yeah.
So it's oil, coal, and gas. So Europe is very heavily dependent on Russia.
Yeah, there's a great video where Donald Trump was like arguing with this German guy who was he was saying like, you know, you want us to pay for NATO to protect you from Russia, and at the same time you're buying all your energy off Russia. So, you know, are they your enemy or not? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So if that's true, it worked. So well done to them.
Oh, plausible.
Yeah. And the last theory, and probably the most interesting, I think, is not that the disaster was intentional, but that the poor handling of the aftermath was. So this theory posits that the USSR wanted to study the effects of massive exposure to radiation because of the possibility of the US nuking them with the whole Cold War thing going on. So I think that's probably plausible.
I think that's more than likely. Like once it went, you know, once it went down, they're like, another Bob Ross happy accident.
Because, I mean, there might be some truth to it. It's no secret that the Soviets had no issue letting harm befall their own people.
Well, even worse, they have no issue letting harm befall Ukrainian citizens. I mean, it's definitely not the worst thing they ever did to the Ukrainians. It was
well, that's right. That's right. So, you know, this theory isn't saying that they caused the explosion, but the explosion happened, and they're like, what if we just give it a few days, let these people get really contaminated with ionizing radiation, and then we'll see what happens so that we know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean,
if
it
the
also
US nuke us.
Helps with treatments, and they can use people as guinea pigs essentially to see what treatments can work, can't work, what you can do for low doses of radiation.
Right. That's right.
I mean,
and
I think every government does that to an extent. They wait for something bad to happen and then sort of use people as guinea pigs.
Yeah, they experiment on their own population. The US government has definitely done that.
Take advantage of situations like that.
As part of MK Ultra. Again, that's another fucking rabbit hole we can't go down now. But the other piece of evidence that points to this potentially being true, and this is actual fact, there is a group of Russian scientists and Chernobyl survivors living on an island in Greece who are trying to unlock the secret to immortality. That is true. That is 100% true. There's documentaries about them. The KGB, the CIA, other governmental agencies have been there and investigated them. That is that's not part of the conspiracy theories. That is true that these people, the Russian scientists and the Chernobyl survivors, are there and that they are trying to figure out immortality. They will admit that to you themselves.
Wow.
It's an island called Gavdos, and it is really fucking weird. Like, they got symbols painted all over the island, and they got this thing called the Temple of Apollo.
I can't wait for the day that we're all laughing at them, but then all of a sudden that island lights up and
Yeah,
they all become immortal or something.
It's really fucking weird. There's something real fucking weird happening there, and that's probably its whole own episode. I can't get too far into it because
I'm interested by that.
It's just so fucking straight. Yeah, look it up. Gavdos. Google Gavdos Chernobyl, and you'll read all about it.
Okay,
very
I'm
interesting.
Yep. So that's what really happened at Chernobyl.
Okay, so let's finish this out with a couple of segments here. We've got Morgan's movie review. Morgan's movie review. This week I watched Grown Ups 2, which stars Adam Sandler.
I can't wait to hear how you bring this full
I want to
circle.
hear you tie this in.
Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Chris Rock, and David Spade. Unfortunately, Rob Schneider didn't make it back for the sequel. That's a bad omen. The original Grown Ups rested on the premise, what if you get 5 funny actors and litter a lazy plot with lazy jokes? The result was that Grown Ups was okay. No one's favourite movie for sure, but a fine way to spend 90 minutes, whatever. Grown Ups 2, on the other hand, has no plot. Nothing happens. Adam Sandler drives the school bus because the bus driver is high. Then he picks up his friends, takes them shopping at Kmart for 10 minutes for no reason at all. Then they all go to his daughter's dance recital. Then they get into a confrontation with some frat boys. And then they decide to throw an 80s theme party at Adam Sandler's house. That's the movie. I was waiting for a plot to emerge, and I thought all the bad jokes were just obscuring what was really happening underneath, but no, nothing happened. There was no problem to be solved, no narrative. There wasn't even a reason for the party. It wasn't a birthday or an anniversary or celebrating anything. It was just, hey, let's have a party tonight. I guess it was kind of like a day-in-the-life movie like Clerks or Waiting, but nothing meaningful happened. It was just one wacky thing after the next with no cohesion. In Clerks, the guy wasn't supposed to be working and ended up having a really shitty shift, forcing him to realize that he needs to take more responsibility for his situation in life. In Waiting, one character has an epiphany, realizing that he has no purpose and no direction, and vows to make a change. In Grown Ups 2, though, no characters learned any lesson or had any realization. It was just a bunch of random shit happening with no follow-up and no conclusion. It was like a bad sketch movie with the same characters appearing in every sketch. There was some decent physical comedy involving Steve Buscemi and Shaquille O'Neal that provided some cheap laughs, but at the end you can't help but feel cheated. The few genuinely funny jokes are spoiled by all the embarrassingly bad jokes. 2 out of 10.
Oh, very harsh.
I am a big Adam Sandler fan. You know that.
Yeah.
It's one of our shared loves.
Of course.
And I could not watch Grown Ups 2. It was a steaming pile of garbage. I got like 15 minutes in and I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Did you actually turn it off?
I turned it off about half an hour into.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. I love Adam Sandler. You know I do. I just couldn't do it. You're right. There's absolutely no fucking plot.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happened. It's just a bunch of garbled mess. It was a low point for Adam.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. Also, what the fuck did that have to do with Chernobyl?
Like Chernobyl, it was a fucking disaster.
There it is. Absolutely. Yeah. I could not agree more.
I think Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2 are just like
Grown Ups had a plot.
Some executive said to Adam Sandler, here's some money, just make a movie. We don't care.
He's open about the fact that he makes like one movie a year to go on a holiday, essentially.
Yeah. So he just, he got his friends together and they're like, all right, what if we were just all, friends in real life and
hanging out, yeah.
What if that was a movie? And that's just
but Grown Ups one, it had a plot.
There was even some genuinely, sort of sad moments with the coach's passing. Like I felt in that movie.
there was at least something to Grown Ups 1. That was like a 5 out of 10 movie. Like something happened.
Yeah. I think if Grown Ups 1 is a 5 out of 10, Grown Ups 2 is like a 4.
No, you are so fucking wrong.
No, Grown Ups.
I think it's okay.
Fuck.
All right, Brad.
So that's my power rankings of the Grown Ups franchise.
You're a piece of shit.
All right, Brad, do you want to finish us out with Brad's power rankings?
I do.
Brad's Power Rankings.
All right, special edition, boys. Special edition.
Oh.
Ah, yes. This is not an entirely new list. This is a revisit.
Oh, okay.
So anyone who's one of our regular listeners, or you guys will know that in our Dyatlov Pass episode, I did top 5 worst ways to die.
Okay.
In researching for this episode, I realised that I have a new worst way to die. And who's not familiar with or just can't remember, my previous top 5 worst ways to die were number 5, burnt alive, number 4, crushed, number 3, drowning, number 2, trapped in a cave underground, and number 1, Dyatlov Pass, as I dub it. Now we have a new big dog in town. Acute radiation poisoning. Now, to understand why this Trump's being trapped in the freezing cold blizzard, dying, cold and alone, one by one, I'll have to explain to you how ionizing radiation affects the human body.
That's okay.
Nah, I did this specifically because I knew it would make your skin crawl, boys.
Alright, thanks guys, I'm out.
Quite literally, it makes your skin crawl.
There are 4 stages of death by acute radiation poisoning. The first stage is the prodromal stage, wherein you feel flu-like symptoms. This can occur within minutes or hours, but it will leave you with diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, and sometimes due to the nausea, rapid weight loss. During exposure, the molecules that comprise you are violently shattered and your DNA is irreparably damaged. Our DNA are the blueprints for our body, and without them, we are unable to create new cells to help replenish the old ones. What follows next is the latent stage. This is the fuck you stage, by the way. You will actually begin to feel better. Your flu-like symptoms will clear up. Yep. And most people feel as though they are out of the woods. Unfortunately,
this is a good time to commit suicide.
But an illusion. By this stage, your bone marrow has been destroyed and your body is unable to produce new red and white blood cells as well as platelets. Platelets are the things that stop you from bleeding.
Yeah, you need those.
You need those for clotting.
But I have platelets.
But on the plus side, because you have a full set of functional cells before the exposure, you're running fine on those. For now. The next stage...
It looks like he's going to be sick.
Yep. The next stage is the manifest illness stage. Depending on your level of dosage, this can occur weeks after the latent stage. So you can feel great for a couple of weeks. But this is where shit hits the fan. All those cells that were running full steam now start to break down as your body can't produce new cells to replace the old ones. The skin will usually break down first, as it is one of the most rapidly replenishing cells on your body. And infection becomes a major risk. Pretty much every system in your body begins to break down. Veins, arteries, organs, nervous system, all of it starts to deteriorate and burst open. Each new thing that fails is another nail in your coffin. Finally, the last step is death. Eventually, enough things will fail and your body will just shut down. Merciful death. The worst case of this I could find was that of Hisashi Oichi. This poor guy was working at the Tokai Mura nuclear plant in Japan. While mixing fuel for a fast breeder reactor, there was a criticality incident, and Hisashi was exposed to 18 sieverts of radiation. That's the most a person has ever been exposed to. It's
That's
worse
a
than
fucking shitload.
He was standing over the breeder reactor, pouring a solution into it, and literally they said it was just an explosion of blue light, and it was all directed at Hisashi.
Jesus Christ. Can I just interrupt you for a second there, just to give people some context?
Yes, actually. I didn't get the numbers here, but yeah.
So, what was it? 18 sieverts.
Yeah, 18.
All in one hit. The average person in 1 year, just in normal day-to-day life, is exposed to around 2.5 millisieverts, which is 1/1000th of a sievert.
Yes.
And this guy got 18 sieverts.
Yeah.
So that's correct me if I'm wrong here, Mills, but that is 6,000 times the normal yearly dose.
Almost 8,000.
All in one hit.
Mm.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Basically, he didn't know it at the time, but he was a dead man walking.
That's your X-Men right there. That's Dr. Manhattan. That's how that happened.
Well, he was flown to Tokyo Hospital and had rapidly deteriorated. Horrifically, he spent the next 83 days falling apart. Literally.
Oh, good God.
The only solace in all of this is that on the 59th day, he suffered 3 huge heart attacks and became completely unresponsive to stimuli. Rest in peace, Hisashi. You were too sweet for this world. So,
Why did they let him live that long? Why didn't they kill him?
Essentially, his family did not put a do not resuscitate because they never
Those motherfuckers.
They never really gave up hope, so to speak.
All right, I want it on record. This is a matter of public record.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
If I am in hospital and there are parts falling off me, pull the fucking plug.
Yeah, well,
if I'm in hospital, just pull it.
When he suffered those 3 huge heart attacks, he was already intubated and unable to really speak or communicate.
Why would they?
Because he was
try
being
and
kept
keep him
alive by a
alive.
ventilator.
Thanks for listening.
That is so
Thanks
cruel.
for listening. This has been a really...
Anyway, now officially the worst way to die, 0 out of 10
That
on
is
Yelp.
so fucking cruel. They should have let him
wrap this
die
up.
a long time ago.
Shut up, Brad.
All right, thank you everyone for listening. If you are still listening after that, we really appreciate it. If you would like to help us out and support us further, you can rate and review us on iTunes. We're currently sitting at an average of 5 stars, so if you could keep that going, that would be fantastic. That's not just us either. We've had at least 5 5-star ratings.
Well,
So,
I don't even fucking own iTunes because I hate Apple, so it can't be me.
That's right. So someone who's listening has actually done it, and we thank you very much. If everyone else could jump on board with that as well, that would be fantastic. You know, also share this episode with your friends. We'd love it if more people would listen. And if you like, you can direct them to bradisabadperson.com, where they will find everywhere that they can subscribe to us, listen to us, follow us on social media. Got a whole list of our episodes there. I believe that is the only place that you can find Morgan's cease and desist letter sent to Brad for the blatant copyright infringement on his Morgan's movie review jingle. So
it was not
head on over there and check that out. And again, just thank you for listening. We do really appreciate it. And let us know what you think on our social media channels. Talk to us. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know if you want us to go more in depth about something we've talked about in the past. There's some episodes where we've talked about a few different things with an overarching theme. You can tell us you want a whole
Space
episode of that
real.
sort of thing. That's right. We'll talk about space being real or not. We don't give a fuck. We don't give a fuck. We'll talk about anything.
Yeah, we'll fly up your ass if the price is
That's right. That's right. Well, why don't you guys fucking cut me off? I'm running out of stuff to talk about here.
I want to see how long you can keep going. You sounded desperate.
My
man.
girlfriend said make sure I pronounce Chernobyl correctly, so I had to look up the correct pronunciation of Chernobyl. And as far as I could tell, it's Chernobyl. Like B belongs to the second syllable, not the third syllable, as a lot of people pronounce it. Chernobyl instead of Chernobyl.
Thanks,
All right,
Mark.
well,
Fun facts.
Well done.